Hello YouTube! So I recently got DM'd some questions about Street Fighter getting into hitting a higher level, and I realized a lot of people learn kind of misconceptions or things that you're told that are technically right, but you gotta realize that everything has nuance to it. So I want to talk about the biggest misconceptions, moves that you're using wrong, or kind of situations that you're thinking about wrong, and why. Okay, so the first one is the most easy. If you've played fighting games for a while, you've probably already heard about it. You can't just think about your fireballs as like zoning and like a projectile you use full screen, right? When you first start learning Street Fighter, you might realize that if I do this, when you first start learning Street Fighter, if you play a fireball character, you might learn that if I do this in neutral, I might get jumped in on punish counter, right? But the same applies to moves like, you know, your heavy kicks that you might use, right? You can get DI'd if they read it. If they jump a little preemptively, you'll get punish counter, right? It's the same idea. Yes, the heavy kicks and whatnot are safer, but they still have the same pros and cons for the most part. They're just a little exaggerated in either way. So Cammy doing something like this at this range and Terry doing something like this at this range isn't all that different. It's a poke that's meant to be annoying. It's meant to make you want to jump. It's meant to make your opponent kind of feel frustrated at this range, but they both have similar counterplay. So don't just think if you play like Akuma or something. Akuma's a really good example because his fireballs are really good. You don't just use your fireballs here to make people jump. You can use them here where you don't want to press stand heavy kick as Akuma because that move sucks against people who crouch, right? Just outside your crouch medium kick range. The very first kind of obvious one is fireballs are not just projectiles. They're not just meant to keep out. They're very, very good mid-range poking tools. The same way you would think of Cammy's heavy kick. Fireball from this range is very similar. So kind of in the same vein, something that you might be told, but it's not actually true, is that if you mash on plus frames, you're a scrub. You'll hear that all the time. I was plus, and he mashed. What the fuck? I mean, it works for a reason. You'll see the top players do this all the time, right? Something like Cammy's crouch heavy punch is plus on block, right? It's +1. Does that mean you should never challenge it? Not really, because sometimes she's gonna wanna do a 7-frame move, which leaves a 6-frame gap, right? So if I make Terry do nothing on block, I can do into this, which I can drive rush or whatever, and I get more pressure. But if Terry knows that I'm doing that, he can counter hit me, and then he can get his own counter hit confirm where he can get a full combo, right? So again, this is kind of a general example. Almost every rule someone tells you is breakable. Like, don't mash on plus frames doesn't make sense, or else people will just loop plus frames, right? Let's exaggerate a bit, and let's say you heard don't mash on plus frames, it's not your turn. You'll hear that a lot. Let's say you took that as Bible. Well, you're gonna just get burnt out because like, what if I just keep doing this? All these are plus, right? It's quite clearly fake, even though I'm using a plus on block move. So yeah, don't take anything you hear as Bible. There's always rules to break, especially something like don't mash on plus frames, because people will take your fear of being minus and like exaggerate their pressure, if that makes sense. And kind of the next tip number 3 in a very similar vein is that doing multiple things that are not optimal is better than trying to always do the optimal thing in general, right? So let's say for whatever reason you hear Cammy's dive kick is bad. It's not, but let's just pretend, right? It's better to use this move knowing that sometimes they'll anti-air you or DI it or whatever, than to just always stand here and whiff punish. Kind of, you know what I'm saying? Like, people will say the best thing you could do is a character like Cammy, very good whiff punishing normals, very good walk speed. That doesn't mean you should just sit here and do that, because the opponent isn't going to be scared. They might walk extra forward. They might just chill. You have to use multiple options that might not be as good, like a dive kick, to scare them into doing something. Now they have to jump. Now they have to walk back. Now they have to preemptively try to stuff it or DP it, whatever, which lets you walk forward, etc. Even the fireball example we talked about earlier, where using a fireball from this range might not be optimal because it can get jumped in on, but if you never do it, they're not going to jump, right? They're going to walk forward and take this space because they're not scared of you from this distance. So using multiple options that you think are kind of middle of the pack is always a better tool than just using what you think is best. If I just play Cammy and I only do this and I only whiff punish, I'm so predictable. It's very easy to play around. If I do a random dash every now and then, some dive kicks, I become so much harder to play against. So that's kind of a general rule. Even if you think something is not the strongest option, if it has pretty much any purpose that makes people think a certain way in order to deal with it, it's worth using every now and then in your arsenal. But just because an option is kind of mid or even sometimes bad, a bad option used every now and then, if it forces a very particular reaction and a mindset, right? You always hear mental stack. That's pretty much what we're getting at here. But it applies to a lot of things. Even neutral, it's not just, you know, defense, it's not just offense. It applies to pretty much everything. Okay, the next one is about defense, where people think on defense you kind of have to guess or you have to react. In reality, it's kind of like a bit of both. I made a whole video on this, which I recommend you check out. A lot of people said kind of changed the way they thought about defense. But I want to show you a quick example here, where Terry's going to throw loop me. But he's going to do this instead, right? So if I delay tech, he's going to hit me. I messed that up, but you get the point, right? But let's say I'm not going to delay tech as Cammy. I've committed in my brain, I'm not going to tech. If Terry does grab me, it doesn't matter. I don't even have to think about that. The only thing I have to do is sit there and block and react to if he does something other than throw. I don't care if he throws. I've committed to not teching. So my guess here is that he won't throw me, so I'm not going to tech. And then I could just sit here and react, right? So if I'm just sitting here down back, I'm down to block, I'm down to block. Oh, he jumped, right? Because the only thing I'm looking at really is his jump, or if I block, then I can react. If you're worried about everything that someone does, and Terry does something like this, if you're worried about that throw, even though you've told yourself you're not teching, like I'm sitting here down back, oh, he grabbed me, oh shit. You know, like you shouldn't even care. You already committed to taking that throw. So you can focus your efforts on other things. In your back of your mind, you're ready to take the throw. You use 0% of your reaction to see if he threw you. So the only things you really have to pay attention to is if he shimmied or if he like neutral jumped, because those are the times that you can take your turn back. If he made you block, that's fine. You were down to just hold down back. If he threw you again, that's also fine. You were down for that, right? So you have to focus. Your defense is not just about blocking everything or reacting to everything. It's kind of focusing on what you can do to escape defense, right? You don't want to sit there in defense all the time. So if I'm ready to take the throw and I'm ready to block, the things that let me get out of defense are I reacted to him shimmying, so I jumped over him or something, or I reacted to him neutral jumping, so I DP'd it. You get what I mean? Once again, I recommend you check out that video. I explain it much more in detail. I probably linked it up at the top, or I'll have it in the description, but yeah, check it out. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is fighting, you know, zoners or people that are trying to keep you out. People have this kind of misconception that you really just have to get in, right? So like Dalsim's doing this stuff on you. Okay, I have to jump in, I have to find my way in, right? But that's usually not how these work, and that's what they want you to do. They're literally like pestering you to like jump at you or just do something so YOLO that they get a bigger punish, right? A lot of the times the way you want to react to these kind of characters and these playstyles is to work your way in slower until you get to a range that they can't use these moves anymore, really, right? I want to show you an example with Dalsim stand medium punch, right? It's -5, I think. Let's do it. -5, right? With a 14 frame startup. So let's say I block it and he does 2. So he wants to keep me out. Well, now look how close I am to him. And I took pretty much nothing, just a little bit of drive gauge, right? Whereas even if he didn't do that stand medium punch, again, let's say he just waiting for me to jump, so he did something like this. Right, and he anti-aired me. Okay, I timed it wrong, but you get the point. Well, if I did the same thing, I also got him for free, right? So you don't want to always just take these YOLO options. People like, you hear that characters like Cammy are good against Guile and Dalsim, right? They have moves that move forward and dive kicks and whatnot. But watch the best Cammys like Punk play against these characters. He's not just doing this for fun and neutral over and over. He's not just dive kicking over. He's still just working his way in. Yes, he does use them. I'm not trying to downplay that Cammy isn't good against these characters. But the point is that getting in on these characters isn't just some YOLO, I need to get in like this, I need to get in like this, I need to get in like this, whatever. A lot of it is walking and blocking and then using their minus frames whenever they show up, or the kind of gaps in their long range pressure to just walk forward, to dash. You don't have to commit so hard. The same kind of idea applies to Gal, right? Let's say we're at this range and I block one of his booms. I'm -9, which means like I can't really do anything. But let's say I just slowly work my way forward and I block one of these booms here. I'm plus now. He doesn't want to use it from these distance anymore because there's too much of a threat of me walking and hitting him. There's too much of a threat of me just block. From this range, I can poke him back. So your goal against when you play a character like Guile, you don't have to think of I need to jump in and land my big combo. Just think of your goal, change your mindset to I need to get to this range, right? This range is scarier for Guile and Dalsim to press their long range moves, and you can whiff punish them, right? When you do get to this range, Guile will start pressing stuff like this instead, and you can whiff punish them, right? So stop thinking of it like I need to jump in, I need to drive my shin, I need to be in their face. That is the end goal, but your goal in neutral should be I need to get to around this range, which is much more doable, and you'll be way better at these matchups if you notice that you're not like YOLOing and taking 1,000,000 damage, because getting to this range, you've probably already started winning the matchup. So just a slight shift in mentality against characters like this. You don't have to just YOLO everything to get in their face. Think of the matchup as I will start winning the matchup if I can make it to here, and you'll see that your results get way better. You won't take so much random damage across the board just trying to get in. And the last one, this is probably one that you already heard. Whiff punishing. You're gonna, especially if you're newer, you see people whiff punishing. That's insane. How are they reacting to a 26 frame move or whatever? It is neither raw reaction or prediction. If you're predicting a whiff punish, that means you're being preemptive, which is kind of the opposite of whiff punishing. Again, it's like I just said in the last example with Guile. I'm trying to get into a range where I want him to press a specific button, so I'm not just, oh my god, Guile did a crouch medium kick, I should do this to whiff punish it. I'm mentally saying, I want to make him whiff a move. I'm trying to make him do it, right? In this case, I'm neither like predicting it, I'm trying to bait it, I'm trying to force it, and because I'm looking specifically for it, it's much easier, right? Whereas if we're just standing here, I'm doing nothing, I have no real plan, then it's gonna be hard to whiff punish. But if you purposely try to make people whiff, you walk into ranges, you whiff something yourself to bait them to try to whiff punish it, but it was like a bait. You know, when you're purposely putting your opponent in situations that, hey, press a button, it is significantly easier to whiff punish. So don't think of them as just raw reactions. Don't think of them as raw predictions or raw like baits. It's a little bit of both, right? And that does make it easier. You'll notice you actually get whiff punishes if you're trying to force people to bait or putting them in positions to bait. Like, right, the most common way you'll probably get used to whiff punishing is by spacing traps. And this is like the same idea. You're baiting them to whiff, right? I do this and he whiffs crouch medium kick. I did that on purpose because I knew it pushes him into a range where it won't reach. So it's the same idea, but you're doing it in neutral with kind of more nuanced approaches. I'm going to make him whiff by making him think he can hit me and I move out. I'm going to make him whiff by whiffing this and trying to bait him to like react to me whiffing. You know what I mean? So yeah, just don't think of whiff punishing as raw reaction or kind of raw prediction. It's somewhere in the middle. And when you think of it that way, you'll be much more successful at it. Okay, so that's everything. If you enjoyed these 5 tips, was it 5? I don't even remember. And you want to see more, maybe some higher level stuff, let me know in the comments what you'd like to see. Anyway, I appreciate a like, comment, and subscription. I'll see you next time. Stay beautiful, my friends.